Today we are going to be talking about best practices for testing in CI/CD with Cypress Cloud. So we'll get lots of great tips from our speakers here. Before we get into the content, and Eli, if you could back up just a couple of slides, we'll go over some quick housekeeping items. So today's event is being recorded. We will share that recording after the event and also post it on YouTube. If you have any questions about Cypress, please post them in the Q&A. So there's a little panel. There should be a panel on the bottom of your screen. And if you add your questions to the Q&A panel, we will leave some time at the end to answer those. So we ask that questions stay specific to the topic at hand so we can keep our team focused. But if you have any other more specific questions about Cypress or your particular setup, please join us on the Cypress Discord, which we'll have kind of linked throughout the deck on the bottom of the slides, so you can ask your questions there. And then we have a community hub for joining any future events or finding the recording of this one. All right, so off to the next slide. We do have we'll have a poll that we'll launch in a minute here, but before we get into that, we'll just do some quick intros for our speakers. So if you go to the next slide, Eli, I'll let Shawn and Eli introduce themselves. I'm Jess there. We also have Ronald in the chat, aka Cypress Webinar himself. So we'll be helping facilitate this event, and I'll pass it off to Shawn to introduce yourself first.
Thank you so much, Jess. My name is Shawn. I am a senior technical solutions engineer. So many words, trying to remember all the titles there. But basically, I help to find solutions internally and also to empower our TAMs and DSEs to be able to help our customers most effectively. And I'll pass off to Eli.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming today. I am Ely Lucas. I'm the head of developer ecosystem at Cypress, and today just super excited to be sharing to you like best practices in CI/CD with Cypress Cloud.
Very cool. All right, and yeah, if you've joined a Cypress webinar before, these are some familiar faces, so it's always great to get Shawn and Eli back on our monthly webinars to go through it. So with that, let's kick off our poll. So we've just got a couple of questions about kind of your setup. It'll help us get to know our audience and kind of what your situation is. So you should see that automatically pull up on your screen. And yeah, go at it. I need some cool like hold music while we wait here. But thanks everyone for filling out the poll. There we go. Looks like DevOps team is in the lead for who maintains your CI/CD orchestration, followed closely by software engineers and QA engineers, which are tied at the moment. Very cool. And then so far, looks like GitHub is in the lead for your current CI/CD provider. Very nice, folks. We'll let it get to like 80% participation, and then we'll continue on. All right, boom. Yeah, there we go. So I think we just shared the results. Hopefully everyone can see that, but yeah, looking like DevOps is in the lead with 41% maintaining the CI/CD orchestration. Software engineers and quality assurance engineers are about tied, around 30%, 0% system admins, and then a couple of other roles as well. And then what is your current CI/CD provider? Looks like GitHub is in the lead with 32%. We've got GitLab at 18% in second place, and then Azure at 12%. So then we've got also a contingent of folks on AWS, Jenkins, Circle CI, and other. Always an interesting bucket there. Fantastic. Okay, thank you all for participating in that. Very interesting for us. Cool. And then with that, let's go to the next slide, and we'll just dive right into the content. So I'll pass it off to Eli and Shawn to take it away.
Thank you so much, Jess. Thank you for getting those polls out for us. So as you all know, today I'm working with Eli, and so today we're going to cover Cypress CI/CD best practices. We're going to do a live demo for that. Then you guys are going to get to see a sneak preview of some things that are not yet released, but soon to be released, and followed by a live Q&A session. Next slide, please, Eli. Cool. So today we're going to be using the Sci Heroes app. It's one of the apps that is created by Eli and the ecosystem team. Eli, do you want to go a little bit more into what the Sci Hero app is and what it does?
Yeah, so this is a demo app that we built specifically for purposes of like doing webinars and doing talks and code examples and all that kind of fun stuff. But if you've ever done the Angular Tour of Heroes app, this is kind of our take on it. So basic premise is that we have this list of heroes. As a user, you can log in, you can like a hero and you can hire a hero. And whenever you do one of those two things, like their accounts will go up, like their fans will go up, or their saves will go up. And you can also log in as an admin and manage the heroes. So it has quite a bit of a different functionality there. It is a full stack app, so it does have a front end and a back end, and it has tests going across all, the whole suite there. And so it kind of fits the gamut of like everything that we looked when we're going to demo Cypress features. And let me just show it here real quick. I popped up Cypress, and we'll just take a look at like one of the tests that are running here. And you can see that, so we got some logging in happening and then filling out, creating new heroes and all that kind of fun stuff. But what I want to do here today with Shawn is I currently have this running in CI using GitHub Actions. But the test suite here is starting to grow a bit. Now it's not really, a full like app that you all use in your sites, but there's about 120 something tests in it right now. And I'm starting to notice like, hey, we're starting to hit some bottlenecks with this test suite. And what are some of the things that we can do when setting up a CI/CD pipeline and using Cypress Cloud to help make that better? So let me pull up the code base here real quick and give you a quick tour of what's going on inside the app. So like I said, we have it's here. It's in a mono repo. We have a client folder that contains a React app. That's the front end portion. And then we have the server folder, which is the back end of the app, which is a Node app. One thing that we are doing here is, like I said, this is a mono repo, but we're not using like a mono repo tool like NX or Learner or anything like that. Instead, we're going really simple here. We're just using NPM workspaces. And this is great because what this will do is it will hoist all the node modules up to the parent level, which is important when we're setting up a CI/CD pipeline for caching purposes. Shawn, here is my workflow right now. And like I said, it's like really basic what we got going on. So I have a couple of environment variables that get set up. And so the V API URLs, so the client knows how to talk to the API. I got the Cypress record key because I am currently recording. This app is currently set up to record Cypress Cloud, and then a GitHub token, which we use in the background to like figure out certain things about GitHub and stuff for your build. Then for jobs, hold on a second.
I think that's the optimized one.
Yeah.
And while Eli's getting that pulled up, I just want to say you can also put your project ID as an environment variable as well. And if not, you can put it in your cypress.config. It doesn't matter either way. It just depends on your company, your team, and your setup. Hopefully you all can hear me this time. Eli's got the super mic over there.
You're coming through loud and clear, Shawn.
All right, cool.
Okay, here we go. So this is the basic one. We kind of saw a little bit like before and after magic there, but this is the basic one. So right now I only have one job, and it's called build and run the tests. And let's just walk through what's going on inside of this GitHub action. And just a little bit of a caveat, we're showing GitHub Actions here in today's webinar. But a lot of the concepts that you're going to see here applies to pretty much any CI/CD provider as far as best practices go. But let's check this out. So we're running on the latest version of Ubuntu. The steps, we are checking out the code, and then we're installing the dependencies, and we're using Cypress's official GitHub actions to do some of these things for us. Now, our Cypress GitHub action will take care of a lot of the things that you would normally have to do yourself inside of a CI/CD pipeline, such as installing NPM dependencies, caching the NPM dependencies, and also caching the Cypress binary. So that takes care of all that stuff for you, so you don't have to worry about doing it. So here we'll use it. So this is going to automatically run NPM install for us. We give it the build command, and this build command is going to build both client and the server apps. We're not going to run the tests here because we have a couple of other steps that run the actual test. So we specify run test as false. And this project has component tests and end-to-end tests in it, and we want to test them both inside of our CI/CD provider. And so in this next step, we're running it again. This time we're saying install false because we installed it in the previous step. And then we're giving it the command to run the component tests. And then pretty much the same thing with the end-to-end tests. The only difference being is that the end-to-end tests require a server to hit. And so we have the start command right here, and the start command will launch both the front-end app and the server app. And this wait on will wait for those servers to come online before it actually starts the tests. And so the client app is at port 3000 and the server app is at port 3001. And so when both of those are up and running, we know we can start running our tests. And so then we'll run the command to test end-to-end right here.
So
now,
Eli, I had a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So I noticed that, so whenever I typically run a test, I normally have to provide in the with and say like, you know, and say like record true, but I noticed that you're using like a custom command here. So is that kind of the reason why you needed to, why you don't have to have that record true on here?
Yeah, so we provide the ability for you to provide your own custom command, which to run tests, or else it will just kind of do an npx Cypress run for you. But because we have both component tests and end-to-end tests, we want to be able to run them both. And so we're specifying our own custom npm command. And inside of the package files, we have those set up to run those inside of the client folder. Now, when you provide your own custom command, that means that any other flags that you could normally provide here, like record, these don't work anymore. So you have to make sure that you're specifying any flags that you want to pass in the actual npm scripts. And so if we take a look at the npm scripts here, you can see that I'm running, I'm recording, setting the group to end-to-end and the group to component testing. And this is important inside of Cypress Cloud because I want this run. I'm testing the entire app here with both end-to-end tests and component tests. I want them to show up as one run inside of Cypress Cloud. And that's what setting the group here will do, is that it will associate both of these runs as the same run, or both of these tests as the same run, but then it will group them by end-to-end test and component test inside of that particular run.
So you passing in that group flag basically means when you run this, when you push this up to the cloud or whatever operator you've chosen to run your CI, basically you're saying instead of this being two completely separate Cypress runs, this will show up the same way as it does in your GitHub Actions as a singular Cypress run, correct?
Right.
Cool.
In fact, let me pull up Cypress Cloud here real quick, and we can take a look at this run here. And so this is the latest one right here. And so you can see that it took 5 minutes and 26 seconds to run between both the component tests and the end-to-end tests. And if we look in here, we can see the tests and none of them failed and whatnot. And if I come over here to the actual test results, or maybe it's over here in specs. So this is what I was talking about. So now I have a group for my component tests that ran in this run and a group for end-to-end tests that ran in this run.
So can you, I'm sorry, can you, so looking at these recommendations here, Eli, do you mind if I just take a quick second to kind of talk about our raw analytics here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. So actually, a couple of months ago, we did a webinar and we talked about a quick little a tool that was going to be coming out, but it wasn't ready at the time. So now that Roar Analytics has been released, essentially what Roar Analytics is run overview analytics recommendations. So as you can see, this gray panel on the right side here, it says parallelization. So it's actually telling you that for this 5-minute and 25-second run, you could actually save about 58 seconds if you were to utilize parallelization on your component test, and save a little over 2 minutes for your end-to-end testing if you click that See Analysis button. Would you mind clicking that See Analysis button real quick? So as of right now, Cypress is telling you you are running on one singular machine, and it gives you like a suggestion of what it might look like if you were to run and up to additional 10 machines. So it looks like if theoretically you were to run in 12 machines, you could have, instead of a 1-minute runtime, you could have something as low as, the 5-minute runtime, you could go as low as 2 seconds and save 58 seconds on that. In addition to the, so it's already not showing on this one, but you will also get like the spec prioritization and also the run failed specs first. Can you go to project settings, Eli? So if we scroll down a little bit, we have spec prioritization and auto cancellation. So spec prioritization essentially says, what was the last time you failed a spec? And we're going to run that spec first. And then auto cancellation says, based on the amount of runs that you have provided, which here we have 1, cancel that run after that number of failures. As you can see right now, we have both enabled, and we'll go a little bit more into those when we see what happens when you fail some of those tests.
Yeah. So auto cancellation, this sounds like this would be really beneficial if I have like a really large test suite and a test fails, and I want to be like alerted like as soon as possible. So it will just if a test fails, like this is like a pipeline that I have that starts before like a release or something like that. A test fails, I want to know right away so I can get in there and fix that test and then try again, right?
Absolutely. And just a little caveat here. So when you're using auto cancellation, one good thing to know is that Cypress needs to detect that failure. So what you will see is Cypress detect the failure, and any specs that are currently running will continue to run, but there will be no new specs after that. So
Okay.
just to clarify, right. So just to clarify, there is the it block, which is the test, and that's what it is looking for, but the entire spec, so you will have several tests inside of each spec that need to complete before that cancels. But it's really great, especially when you have like, 5 or 700 specs going.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, really important to keep in mind when you're doing parallelization.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this sounds really awesome. I want to take advantage of parallelization. What are some of the things that I need to do to get there?
So we could actually optimize it in a couple of ways. Taking this build. So the first thing that we could do is, right now, the way that you have it set up is it is going to check out all of the code, and then we're going to run GitHub Actions, and then it is going to run all the CT tests and then all the EPE tests.
Mm-hmm.
But we're actually not. We're actually having to like kind of install it twice. So what we could do is we could actually create a install step and then reuse that. We could store it as an artifact and reuse that.
Okay, yeah, that's let's go ahead and do that. And through the magic of demo land, boom, there we go. Cool. So let's talk through this install job real quick and why it's beneficial, especially when you're running in parallel.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we got, so we're once again running on Ubuntu. This is now an installed job, so it's separate from the other ones. We're checking out all the code again. Once again, we're not running the test because we're going to do that in a subsequent job. We're running the build. Now, the important thing that we're doing here is the Cypress GitHub action The important thing that we want to do here, and this is a best practice, is that when you have an install step like this, you want to make sure you are caching any of the built assets and dependencies so you can reuse those later in your job. There's no sense in like rebuilding your app again or downloading all the npm modules again. You just want to reuse all that stuff that happened in the install job. And so the Cypress GitHub action automatically takes care of caching the npm dependencies for you, as well as the Cypress binary. But now we've built our app and we want to save the built assets so they can be reused later as well. And that's what this step here is doing. And so we're using the upload artifact GitHub action provided by GitHub. And then we're specifying, or we're giving it a name. So this is kind of like the cache ID. If no files are found, we're going to error because that probably means something happened in our build and the files just aren't there. And then we're giving it the paths of the folders that we want to back up. So remember, this is a mono repo with 2 apps in it. So we're saving off the client app and the server app. Okay. What do we want to do after this?
So after this, like, so now you've got the build, you got the build, the install job. So now we actually need to call that job for our component test. Or we can do it for our end-to-end job.
Yeah, let's put the end-to-end one in here and make sure this all lines up. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, so now the end-to-end test. So the install job is now finished and it's going to kick off this end-to-end test. I'm sorry, this end-to-end step. So we're going to check out all the code again. And then we're going to use the download artifact GitHub action to download the built assets for us. And so we give it that key that we specified up here on line 24. And then we're telling it the path that we want to do it. And basically what this is it's pretty much a zip file. And so we're telling it where we want to extract the zip file, and we'll do it at the root. And then because it saved all the path names when it was bundling it up, it will just put it all in the right place. And now we're going to run the Cypress end-to-end tests. And so once again, we're going to use the GitHub action. This is going to make sure that all those npm dependencies are there and ready for us to use. And here we got, so this is very similar to what we saw in the basic example, but we're going to start up our servers. We're going to wait on those URLs to come live, and then we're going to run our end-to-end tests. Now we also want to do component tests. And so we have a separate job for component tests. And this is very similar to the end-to-end test. It's doing the same steps as far as the checking out and then downloading the built artifacts. But we don't need a server for the component test. It will fire up one on its own. And then we run the npm test command. Okay.
And
now,
just a quick question, Eli.
Yeah.
So for this run command, since you're running in parallel, and you may be going into this here in your next step, is there anything that we need to do to our custom command in order to run in parallel, or is it the same as when we were not running in parallel?
Well, let's take a look at the script, because I do think there is something that we need to do to tell Cypress that we're going to be running in parallel, right?
Right.
And that is passing in the parallel flag.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think that might work out to our benefit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're passing in the parallel flag, and what this is doing, this is instructing Cypress when it boots up to contact Cypress Cloud and to ask Cypress Cloud, like, hey, we're going to run in parallel. It's going to know how many machines it's running in parallel with. It's going to be like, hey, we got X number of machines that we're going to be running our tests across. Give me the best situation for running these tests. And then Cypress Cloud is going to be like, okay, machine 1, you run these 3 specs, machine 2, you run these 5 specs, and machine 3, there's this really long running spec. We just want you to handle that one. So it's pretty intelligent on how it will split up everything to run. So that's telling Cypress what we wanted to do. What we need to do over here is we need to set up the GitHub action to spin up multiple instances of the runners for component tests and end-to-end tests. And the way that we do that is we can use a matrix strategy and pass that in. And let me grab that code real quick so you don't have to see me type it.
And while you're grabbing that code, just so that I understand fully, so when you say that you're running in parallel, you're saying that instead of running on a singular machine, Cypress and your CI provider are going to take those tests and spread them out across however many machines you kind of tell it, or however many it determines that it needs.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. So in order to set up multiple instances of GitHub Actions to run, we will use this matrix strategy. And
So
so
since you have 6 in there, does that mean it's going to run 6 every time?
Yep. So this is telling it to fire up 6 different containers. Now, the name here and the numbers in here are arbitrary, but what this takes in is an array, and it's going to run this job for each item in the array. And it knows that it can do these in parallel, so it will queue these up to run. And then as soon as instances are available, GitHub Action instances are available, which is usually pretty quick, it will fire those up, and these can now run in parallel. This fail fast option, what we're saying here is we're saying we do not want to fail a particular job if for some reason like a test fails on one of them. We want to keep them all up and running. So I'll take this strategy and I'll also put it down in component tests. And you can see here, we chose 6 concurrent containers to run at one time, because there's a little bit of diminishing returns that you get. You saw the graph of the going like, hey, if you go all the way up to 12 machines, you can run each test by itself and it's going to run super, super fast. But there's diminishing returns here. So you'll probably want to play around with like the number of containers that you want to spin up, because every time you spin up a new container, you're actually using more build minutes in your CI/CD provider for each new container that you spin up. So you want to keep that in mind too. You might be saving like overall time linearly, but the number of all those spinning up and having to do all the setup steps takes some time as well. So something you have to keep in mind. All right.
And that's also going to vary based off of what CI provider you use. So with, like Eli said, for this example, we're using the free version of GitHub Actions, which it uses minutes, but their enterprise version has a different pay scale. Circle CI or Jenkins or Travis, all of those are going to also have a different pay structure. So you'll want to pay attention to that as well.
Cool. All right. I think this is good to go. Let's go ahead and commit. We made a change, important changes to the YAML file and the package file, adding in the parallel tags. Go ahead and commit that, and I'll come down here and go Cypress. And we'll fire this up. And if everything works good, I'm going to pull up the GitHub Actions page. You can see that it's already picked up and is running the step. Okay, so this is probably going to take a minute or two to run. We'll kind of watch it here in the background. While this is going, Shawn, is there anything that we can talk about as far as like other types of best practices that we can do in CI/CD?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I noticed when we were setting up was we didn't use a Docker image. So one, can you tell me why someone would use a Docker image? And then the follow-up question would be, why did we opt to not use that Docker image?
Right. Okay. So Cypress, we provide a bunch of different Docker images that you can use in your CI and CD workflows. And they kind of fall into like 3 different categories. The first category is providing like the base dependencies that you would need specifically for a Linux environment to get Cypress up and running. The second level is different types of browsers. So we have Docker images for all the different types of browsers out there going back to different versions. And so if you wanted to test like an older version of Chrome, or you want to make sure Firefox was on your system, you can use those Cypress images to do it. And the third level that we have is actually having Cypress built into the Docker image itself, so it doesn't need to download the binary. Now, the reason why we're not using one here is that the base GitHub action for Ubuntu includes a lot of the stuff that we already need. It already has all the dependencies to run in Linux. The base Docker or the base GitHub Actions runner also has a bunch of browsers already installed for us. Like it has Chrome, Firefox. On Mac OS, it's going to have Safari, has Edge on all of them. So you're pretty well covered there in the browser situation. You might want to use one of our Docker images if you want to test on an older version of a browser, because the GitHub Actions is pretty much the latest version of all the browsers. And then the Cypress, having Cypress built in, which is kind of taken care of for us already via the caching and stuff that the GitHub Actions provides. Okay, so here you can see that we've got a few things going on. So our install job now happens before the other two jobs start off. And we have this matrix going on, and you can see that it's fired up 6 instances of all these. And so these are now running and should be done any moment now, I would think. And I can also pull up Cypress Cloud. Oh, I did have it up and running here. I'm just going to throw it into there. Come over here in the latest runs, and you can see that it's currently executing. Okay, all of our component tests are now done. And we can start to see the end-to-end test. Finish, finish, finish. This must have been the one of the longer tests going on here. Awesome. Okay, so we're done here. Let's take a look in GitHub Actions real quick to see what we have going on. If we take a look at the actions, we can see that the one, oh, I lost it. The base, okay, so the basic YAML one that we had took 6 minutes and 43 seconds to run all the tests, and that was basically running them in order sequentially. Our new one with parallelization took 3 minutes and 51 seconds with 6 containers. And so we cut off like a good chunk of time so far just with parallelization. And if we come over and look in the branch here, you can see that we have an errand test going in there, but the one before that, so the actual testing time took 5 minutes and 26 seconds, and over here the actual testing time for them all 1 minute and 36 seconds. And so this is kind of a good thing to keep in mind, is that Cypress Cloud dashboard, or the Cypress Cloud, is showing you test execution time, and GitHub Actions is showing you the execution time of the entire runner. So that includes like downloading npm dependencies, restoring caches, all that kind of, all the setup stuff that needs to go along with it as well.
Also, too, to point out, the Cypress time also includes things like uploading any artifacts that you may have had. So if you upload those videos or screenshots on failure, those also add to the time. So it's pretty common to see a discrepancy in the times that you see in the Cypress Cloud versus what you see in your CI provider, because like Eli said, any time that it takes to spin up those instances or install different dependencies. Again, if you're using a different CI provider where you need to install browsers and things like that, that won't be included in Cypress's time. However, what's included in Cypress time that may not be included in your CI provider are things like videos and other artifacts that are uploaded.
Right. Okay, Shawn, I was super intrigued by the auto cancellation and spec prioritization. So let's take a look at that next. So we already have it turned on. Is there anything I need to do in my Cypress commands, passing in any additional flags or anything in my YAML files I need to set up for this?
No, the only thing that you'll need to do is just toggle those two options there. And realistically, to see these work, the only thing that you kind of need to do is fail a test.
All right, let's do that. That sounds fun. I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to pull up a test and we'll just say, let's go right here. Well, we'll mess up this assertion on purpose and then watch it fail. Fail on purpose.
Playing a dangerous game here.
All right, push that up. All right, so that is now running. And while the second one runs, let's see if we have any questions that have popped up.
Absolutely. So I've been keeping track of the Q&A section. And one of the first questions is someone's asking about can they run a specific test case, even if they're running in parallel or on a different CI provider? And the answer there is yes. You can use different versions of selective testing. So you can either run you can use the -- spec flag or just -s, whichever you prefer. You can run a subset of specs. You can also provide kind of like Eli did, where he has groups where he says, I want, to have the CT and the end-to-end, where he could have a specific command that only runs a certain subset of tests. The way that his is running right now, it runs both of them. Or you could also have a completely separate config. Another option would be to use different versions of grep. Cypress does have a Cypress grep, which is part of our verified packages. Any other selective testing options that come to mind there, Eli?
Well, one of the things I like to recommend is thinking about like your testing strategy. And sometimes when we have a small number of tests like we do here with the Cypress Heroes app, it just kind of makes sense to run every test every time, like on every push. But as your test suites grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and you start to do like more variables, like you're testing different browsers, you're testing different screen resolutions, you're testing on different operating systems, it starts to become prohibitive to do all those tests on every single push. And so one of the things I like to recommend is if you do feature-based testing. What I mean by that is if you set up your spec files in a way that's like more based on how a user would go through your system versus like particular pages or anything like that. Let's say like one of our features is like adding a hero. And so we'll have a folder for add hero. We can use the spec flag and the Cypress run command that Shawn mentioned to only specify that folder. So for our particular feature branch, we can set up a job that will only test those specs in that folder. That way we're just testing our stuff. And then like later we can do a whole test suite, like on a nightly basis or before a release or something like that. That way your developers aren't being held up by the testing time, but you're still doing the entire test suite so that if something did fail because of that, you still want to alert the developers as soon as possible. And it kind of comes to one of our like core principles in that like you really want to optimize human time over machine time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Looks like we're just waiting for a few more jobs here. So another question that's in here is, while we're looking into that, it says it's really frustrating that my tests run fine locally, but in CI, I keep getting random errors. And one way that you can look into that is, most importantly, is making sure that you have the correct the test runner specifications. So Cypress depends heavily on the application itself, so the application under test. So for running something locally, you may have like a really fancy like 32 gig, blah, 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 computer that you're running on. But if you're using something like in our example here, where we're using GitHub Actions, this only has 7 gigs of available RAM available to you. So this is something that you 100% have to take into consideration. So if you're using something like that, just for Cypress alone, Cypress would recommend running at least 2 of the GitHub Actions runners, along with additional runner if you're going to have videos recording and things along that nature. And it also depends on what you need. So if you're seeding databases, if you're running fixtures, if you're mocking intercepts, things like that, you may need to choose a different CI provider if that's not what's working for you. GitHub Actions works great for some people, but for some people it does not. Looks like we've got a great failure over here, Eli.
Yeah. So here, I was tracking it down where the error actually happened. And so in this 5th runner is where the error actually happened. Now, remember, we said that auto cancellation will only cancel like specs that haven't run yet, right? And so we can see here that we did have a couple of the runners complete because all their specs ran beforehand. But as soon as we got their first failure here and all these other ones, we failed it right away. So this is pretty cool. And this is like one thing I want to show real quick. And that is the integration between Cypress Cloud and the Cypress app itself. So I'm going to open up the app locally. And over here in the debug tab, you can see I'm getting a little alert here. And I can actually see that it failed. I can see which test failed, all the information about it. And I can also say run the failures. And what this is going to do is it's going to actually run that test locally. So I can see exactly what's going on. So, if it was like a regression in the system, like, oh, okay, I can quickly see it. I can go in here and be like, oh, okay, that's exactly where the error is. In fact, you can look at the thing here, like actually click on this to open it in the IDE, come over here and fix the spec right away. And let's go ahead and then commit that again. And we'll just say, hey, we fixed the spec. And push it up.
So the expectation here is, since we have smart orchestration, this spec should run first, correct?
Yeah, so the spec prioritization will automatically put any specs that failed to run first across all the machines that we're parallelizing it across. That way, if for some reason the spec didn't pass, it would fail again quickly and alert you quickly as well.
Cool. And what is that little notification over there that you just clicked on?
Oh, which one?
The debug. That seems pretty new.
Yeah. This is what I was just showing. So in here we can see the error message. We can run the failures. We can also come in here and view any screenshots. This is going to open up here in Cypress Cloud, so we can see a screenshot of where it was failing, and then we can also view the video for it as well inside of Cypress Cloud. Okay, so we have the latest one. I got too many browser windows going on here. Here we go. So we got the latest one running here. I fully expect this to pass and whatnot, but now would probably be a pretty good time. We got a few minutes left to just kind of like reiterate some of the best practices that we're talking about here. And so first off, when you're setting up your CI/CD pipeline, that it's important to break apart your jobs between installation jobs and worker jobs, and have your installation jobs be responsible for downloading the dependencies, building the application, and then caching off all those things. And then you have your worker jobs, and your worker jobs are your tests, like we see here, or your linting, any other jobs that would require that the app already be built there. And the reason why we do that is because now they can be ran in parallel, and not just parallel from Cypress Cloud, but parallel inside of the runners themselves. And then we're using Cypress Cloud to actually parallelize our tests to run them faster. All right. And I think with that, is there more that we wanted to show on the slides, or do you think we should just move over to Q&A and answer some burning questions that people have?
I just wanted to kind of go over like a couple of sneak peek things really quickly, and then let's hop into Q&A.
Oh yeah, let's make sure we get those in.
I think it's 18. All right, so like we said, run overview has been released. You might also hear it being referred to as ROAR. On that right side panel, you will see the recommendations that are that Cypress is providing to you. So you would have spec prioritization, auto cancellation, and you would also see parallelization. That's a whole lot of Asians there, but for the parallelization one, if you are utilizing parallelization, but you are actually not optimized fully, you will still see that option there. And Cypress will basically say, hey, I understand that you're utilizing parallelization. However, we noticed that you're currently using 5 machines and we're recommending 12. So you will still see that one there. Otherwise, if you activate the spec prioritization and auto cancellation, you will see those recommendations dissipate. Next slide, please, Eli. Also, debug page has been released. Eli did an excellent job of covering that, where you can see those real-time errors and try to go in, fix it, and before pushing it back up, see if it passes locally before pushing it back up in CI. And you can save those valuable CI minutes, and also, more importantly, save it developer time. And next slide, please. So you all are actually getting like a super sneak peek. As some of you know, we have the Slack integration where you can get notifications as quickly as possible to whenever you have a failed or flaky test. But you all have asked for it, and we are soon to be releasing a Microsoft Teams integration. Again, I know a lot of you have asked for this. I don't have an ETA on when that's being released, but we just want to let the community know before everybody else knows. And next slide, please. And then branch review. So I think that one of the hardest things whenever you are trying to compare the test runs between like your feature branch and your base branch, it's not really like a optimal workflow right now. You kind of have to like go in and kind of figure it out yourself. But Cypress, again, has listened to the people, and we are now making it so that you can compare the test results between your current branch and your base branch and be able to see easier, like, hey, this one's flaky, this one's failing. Again, more information to come on that, but again, just giving you all that sneak preview. And final slide, Eli. And I believe Jess had a little something here that she wanted to add about getting in touch with us.
Yes, so if anyone wants to get in touch with the Cypress team to learn more about the cloud, please feel free to scan this link and a member of our team will reach out. So you can use this QR code. I'll also drop a link to the form directly in the chat. And there you go.
All right. I'll change the slide in 3, 2, 1. All right, give you an extra second. All right, Q&A.
There's no shortage of questions. It might be something where if we can't get to them all, maybe we'll yeah, just review these and either send them out afterward or yeah, just figure out a way to answer all these questions for you all. But if there are any specific questions, just another reminder, please drop them in the Discord to continue the conversation with our team and our ambassadors.
So I just found a really good question that we get asked a lot of times. And the question is, what CI/CD provider would you say works best with Cypress Cloud, where you do most of your optimizations and validations? And I would say that this is something that is really heavily dependent upon your team's setup. Again, GitHub Actions and Circle CI work really great for a lot of teams. They have free versions. Circle CI, you can even say like, hey, I want to use a larger runner or extra large runner, and that's still included in the free plan. But for some teams that this 7 or 8 gigs that are available is not feasible option for their setup. So that would really be dependent upon if you want to upload videos, if you want to if you need to run a database, if you need to seed that database, if you need to run servers. So Cypress can be literally used with any CI provider. I honestly use GitHub Actions majority of the time or Circle CI, but that's just because they have free versions available. Anything you want to add there, Eli?
No, I think you covered that one pretty good.
Cool. Just taking a look through the questions.
Yep.
Yeah, so many questions. Here's one from Monica. From a parallelization standpoint, are groups a factor in smart orchestration, or is that more for organizing things in Cypress Cloud?
That sounds right up your alley, Shawn.
Okay, cool. So groups, it's not that they're not a factor in smart orchestration, it's just more so that is more tailored to how you want to write your specs. So the smart orchestration is going to, it doesn't necessarily say what is this group specifically. The raw analytics, you can like remove tags and things like that. But smart orchestration isn't going to say this group failed or this group is flaky. Smart orchestration will say this test overall is flaky or whatever like that. But utilizing groups is a really great way once you start to scale up to be able to pinpoint where the problem started and be able to either get it to the correct team or better yet, the correct person as quickly as possible.
Okay. I see a question here on how easy is it to do parallelization in Bitbucket. And I would say that we have a doc. So if you go to docs.cypress.io and go down to continuous integration, we have a guide for Bitbucket that you can take a look at, and all the information that you need should be in that guide.
There's also another question that says, can you use Cypress Cloud together with Jenkins CI/CD, and is there an example? You can use Cypress with Jenkins, and there are several examples, not just in our docs, but also if you go to, there is a repo called Cypress Kitchen Sink, and in there you will find several examples from several CI providers such as Jenkins, BuildKite, Drone, Circle CI. I mean, there are a lot of examples in there. So yeah.
Yeah, if you go into our docs and you go into the continuous integration section, you might miss it because we don't have a Jenkins guide all on its own. But if you go into the CI provider examples, there's a section in there specifically for Jenkins that you can go and see examples of Jenkins up and running. I see a few questions around like, hey, like Cypress isn't running in CI, or Cypress is crashing or something like that. These are usually going to be very particular to setups and stuff like that. And so I would say like probably if you think it's a bug in Cypress, like open up an issue on GitHub or hop into our Discord server and post your specifics so we can take a look at those. But trying to figure out like what's going on with those like during the Q&A sessions. Not too feasible, but yeah, please go and either use Discord or GitHub Actions for that.
And just one more question, because I know we're at time here. Mohit asked, is running headless considered best practice in CI? Do you lose out on anything running headless?
No, don't think so. That is definitely the recommendation, is to run headless, mostly because inside of the CI provider, you can't see what it's doing anyways, and it's probably a little bit less resource intensive to do so.
I've also heard of people running headless as well on the when running locally as well. So
yep.
Cool. Can you go to the next slide, Eli?
Yep, this is it.
Excellent. It's all you, Jess.
All right. Yes, very engaged audience today. Thank you all so much for attending. And it was really fantastic hearing from Eli and Shawn. Great job on the presentation. If you have further questions or you need more support from the Cypress team, please go and check out our Discord. We've got the link there, and we've posted it in the chat a couple times as well. And we will, we'll be able to assist. And if you go to the next slide and you are in the market, Cypress is hiring, hooray. So we'll leave this on the screen for a minute as well. Please go ahead and scan that and check out our listings. Always fantastic to, just have some time with the community. So thank you so much, everyone. And we will close out this event.
Shout out to Casey Klingerman for answering questions in the chat. I see you in there, my guy. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, definitely appreciate all the Cypress folks that hang out and participate in the webinars. So thank you, Casey. Awesome, everybody. Well, once again, thank you for joining, and we'll go ahead and cut it off here, and happy testing.